Welcome to 30-Minute Reviews. I am Adam. So, I decided to break this up because when I said the other day that we were going to be doing one mega long episode, that was before I knew what was going to be dropping within the last 12 hours. Yeah, it dropped like 2 in the morning. So, like, within the last 12 hours, we got a bunch of stuff came down. So, we're going to discuss all of that. And I want to be able to make it so that people can, find it easier without having to sit through an entire episode to get to it. So, let's discuss our new trailers that dropped today. We're going to start out with Black Widow, which came out last night. Now, this is going to be a quick episode only because I don't have too much to really talk about with this. I've watched the trailer like twice, but granted that was like 2 in the morning when it came out. And I'm watching this trailer, and it strikes me how different it looks. Now, let's take into consideration where we were in the Marvel Cinematic Universe prior to this movie. Over the last 2 years, we had Black Panther, which was very, it had an Afrofuturist style to it. It it had a distinct sign. I'm sorry, I'm still getting over my what's it called? My sinus infection. It had a distinct Afrofuturist vibe to it. It still felt like science fiction, even if it was grounded science fiction. So it was a very different. It wasn't like a more grounded movie. Even if the topic was grounded, it still didn't feel quite as grounded as some of the other entries in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The next movie after that was Infinity War, which, was Infinity War. And in that movie, you're dealing with the Thanos collecting the Infinity Stones to wipe out half of life in the universe. Then we have Ant-Man and the Wasp, which, again, grounded in content area, but not in what it's still hard science fiction. So then we go from there to the movie right after that is Captain Marvel, which is in space. Then Endgame, which is time travel, and again dealing with cosmic beings and things like that. And then Spider-Man, which was more grounded in a way that the previous entries weren't. Like, the technology was technology that you can look out our window and say, this is coming in the near future. And you can see it and you're like, oh, okay, I kind of get where they're going with this. And, this is a possibility within, like, an imminent time frame. And at the same time, it's still portrayed in a way that makes it look different. Now, let's look at Black Widow, which is so different. It looks like Atomic Blonde. It looks like John Wick. It like, the fighting in the trailer looks tight, organized, like, clear. It looks very different from anything we've seen in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and that's by design. If you're gonna do a Black Widow movie, you can't do a Black Widow movie where it's like, and now they're gonna fight, some being that's way above her pay grade, because it's like it would come off weird. Now, Taskmaster's a good villain. Someone pointed out on Twitter the reason why his costume looks a little bit different from how it should look based on the comics, and that's because of China. And I understand that, they have to appeal to China because it's like the largest market for movies in the world, but what are you going to do? Maybe they'll fix the design with the slight amount of fan backlash that exists over it. But that it's an interesting way to go. One of the things I did talk about on Twitter was the shot of Thunderbolt Ross, which, looking back at previous trailers from Disney, these big budget Disney movies like Marvel and like Star Wars, is they go out of their way to misdirect a lot, and that's by design. They don't want you to go into the movie knowing exactly what's happening. So they'll shake up the order of scenes to make it look like something's happening and something's not. They'll digitally remove things to make it harder to tell when in the movie it happens. Like for example, they marketed Thor Ragnarok. They when they showed him landing on the Bifrost, they didn't digitally remove his eye, which was torn out by Hela at the time in the actual movie. When they were when they were doing Infinity War, through all the trailers, Thanos never has more than 2 Infinity Stones, because having him, the easiest ones to show are the Tesseract, which by the time they're marketing it, Thor Ragnarok had already come out, and they know where the Tesseract is, because it's with Loki. And then the Power Stone, everyone knew that going into the movie that Nova Prime was going to get raised. Xandar was going to get raised, and everyone would end up dead. So like that was a foregone conclusion by that point. So, but showing that, you know, they destroyed Nowhere and stole the Reality Stone, we didn't know what the Soul Stone was. Showing that Doctor Strange gave up the Time Stone, and showing that it ended up lasting the movie. But if they showed that they had to kill Vision to get the Mind Stone out, that would have given away major plot points. So through the entire thing, the only 2 stones he's ever shown to be having, even when he's confronting Captain America in Wakanda, is he's only ever shown to have 2 Infinity Stones, and that's by design. In the first trailer, they show scenes of, like, it opens with Tony Stark on Titan as he's sitting there, you know, right after Peter dies in his arms, and then they also show the scene where he's where Quill, right before he dies, after the snap. They didn't. I thought they showed Nick Fury in that trailer, but after rewatching both trailers earlier today, they didn't show Nick Fury. I thought they did. Then in Ant-Man and the Wasp, in one of the trailers, they showed the ant that was living in his house playing the drums, which we know is from the second post-credit scene after the snap. They didn't show the post-credit scene from Captain Marvel in the movie, because one of them was one of the nonsense scenes, and the other scene was what's it called? And the other scene was I thought it was it was tied into Endgame, so you couldn't really put that into the movie because it wouldn't fit, it wouldn't flow properly. But they did show the big shots from the trailers, her destroying the alien fleet, her going binary and all of that. Those were all from the third act. And it was edited to make it look like it happened earlier in the movie. And then Endgame, they marketed without showing. It's a 3-hour-long movie, and they cut it down, obviously, to 3 minutes. They did it without showing any of the second act, or the third act, for that matter, except for one shot of Tony, Steve, and Thor walking out to face Thanos. That said, that's a very long-winded way of saying that. And with Far From Home, they showed a lot of the post-credit scene, him swinging through New York, him going to. Him reacting to his reaction, him putting his hands on his head, is a direct reaction to J. Jonah Jameson exposing his identity. And like I was saying, it's a very long-winded way of saying that shot very early in the trailer, where we see General Ross returning, is probably going to be the start of the Thunderbolts. Now, on top of the fact that the scene is very short, the sequence that we see in the trailer is very short, and it's just like one quick shot of him. On top of that, it would also be in line with, there's a guy, Roger Wardell, on Twitter, who discussed leaks that happened. He was the one who was able to, he leaked most of Endgame before the movie came out, and he was accurate about everything that happened. He also said they were working on The Black Knight, which turned out to be true, and they cast Kit Harington in the role for Eternals next year. So he's very accurate. So he also said they're working on a Thunderbolts movie. Now, if they're doing a Thunderbolts movie, I think the best way to introduce this at the end of this in a post-credit scene, because of two things. Number one, the first two post-credit scenes that we got from the Marvel Cinematic Universe were Nick Fury with Nick Fury coming to Tony and being like, "You're part of a bigger universe," the whole thing. He talked to you about the Avengers Initiative, and then the second one was the scene where where Tony goes and talks to General Ross in The Incredible Hulk. And the reason why those two kind of mirror each other is because it's about recruitment. It's about getting ready for the next phase. And in the aftermath of Endgame, we only have had one movie that tells us the story of what happened to the world after Endgame. And what we know is that, the world's still kind of reeling, and, we get a sense that the world's kind of, like, confused about what happened, and they may not want to completely address what happened. It's something that they're not exactly, 100% at terms with, because they had the 5 years to come to terms with the snap, and now the world's back to the way it was before, and even that's not really 100% the way it was before, because we still have, people are displaced now because of the snap. People are, families have moved on from the death of their loved ones, and it's a whole big thing that people have to deal with. So we don't know where the Avengers fit into this, because the first real Avengers-level threat that the world has to face in the aftermath of Thanos and his armies is Mysterio. And not even Mysterio, it's the Elementals, because that's how it's portrayed to the world. The Elementals come out, and they, do all of that. They do all the destruction, and Mysterio makes it look like he's the good guy. Mysterio then dies at the hands of Spider-Man publicly, so everyone thinks that happened. And then he goes out, and he, and that's... So there's going to be this big public distrust of heroes. And when we go to... what's it called? The other thing that's coming out next year that I'm thinking of, what's it called? Falcon and the Winter Soldier. The U.S. government creates U.S. Agent, which is going to be the next, big thing. And Zemo's going to be back, and we know Zemo has a knack for sowing discord. That's kind of his thing, as we saw in Civil War, and that his entire thing is infiltrate, destroy from within, we'll go from there. So what we see is they're kind of planting the seed where we can start getting a world in which the government needs to step in and create their own Avengers. And what better way to do that than to have General Ross take the lead on that? So we have that. We know that Justin Hammer's still in play, and we know all this is still happening. And I think that this scene is going to set it up, because it's going to then mirror Nick Fury. He's going to take that role, and he's going to come to Taskmaster, who's been defeated by Black Widow. He's going to, the scene looks like it's in like a field of some kind, so it's going to be someone moved him to, this field, and he's like, look, I'm going to cut time off your sentence if you come and join me and, try and make amends. And they're going to portray him in a way that doesn't make him look like he's completely the bad guy, because otherwise there's going to be no reason for him to do that. Because, like, even so, if you look at the other people who are potential members of the Thunderbolts who are still in play, it's like Justin Hammer wasn't looking for global domination. He was looking to make a weapons sale. If you look at Abomination, he was just trying to be the perfect soldier to try and, one-up the Hulk. I mean, it's still not a great thing. It's just he wasn't bent on... It was mindless destruction, but he wasn't bent on, destroying anything. It's like these people who are misguided, yet not Malekith or, Thanos or, anything like that. They're out there, and they're still kind of not great people, but they're, what else are we going to do? And it's going to, people love a redemption story, so it's the kind of thing that, like, from a PR standpoint, the government will be like, oh, this is a great idea. So, in reality, I could see them doing that as a way to introduce it, because it kind of consolidates the two together. And I think that that's what that scene comes from. Because also see how, from what we know about this movie, I don't know how General Ross fits into the plot in a way that makes sense. Because we know what this movie is. This movie is about, from the time between Civil War and Infinity War, what happens to Black Widow. And she goes out, she reunites with her family, and things happen. And that's, the simplest way of putting what happens is things happen. And we know it inevitably is going to lead to her coming back to that train station in Scotland, and, fighting off Corvus Glaive and Proxima Midnight with Captain America and with Falcon and all of that. And we know it's going to start right after she leaves Tony at the Avengers headquarters at the end of Civil War. There's going to be flashbacks in the middle of the movie, but General Ross was someone who was never really involved with the Avengers in any major capacity. He wasn't involved with S.H.I.E.L.D. He was the U.S. government. And one of the things they always portray is that the U.S. government kind of doesn't get involved, except S.H.I.E.L.D., which is kind of its own independent entity. So it's interesting to see how they're going to... You can't really work that into the plot in a way that's meaningful, and if he has access to Black Widow, then he could have access to the other quote-unquote secret Avengers, which is what they're calling Captain America while he's on the run. So it'll be an interesting thing to see where they go with that. I do concretely think that that's the end of the movie. I think it's going to be an interesting way. It's going to be a very important movie. It's the first opportunity they have to legacy a character, because this is going to be Black Widow's last entry, unless it does really well, which it probably will break $1 billion. But when this movie ends, there's going to be what's her name taking over. Yelena's going to be taking over as Black Widow. And at the end of the day, that's what's going to end up happening. And there's nothing you can really do to change that. I forgot where you went with that. But if we're talking entirely about the trailer and not about how it fits into the larger Marvel Cinematic Universe, this movie looks like it stands alone on its own. It looks like it stands very well on its own. And I'm looking forward to it. And the other thing that we're going to discuss in this episode is the other trailer that dropped. It's now 12:30, so about a half hour ago this dropped. Mark Guggenheim tweeted it out. The trailer for Crisis on Infinite Earths, which begins next Sunday. Going to the other side of the street to DC for this one. Now, I've been hyped for Crisis probably more than anything else that's happening in the back half of the year, and that includes The Rise of Skywalker, and that is not an indictment on The Last Jedi. I did like The Last Jedi. What it is an indictment of is the way that they've done such a good job marketing that movie compared to The Rise of Skywalker. That TV show. Now, this trailer that dropped today, it does get a bit spoilery, especially when coupled with the, especially when coupled with what we already know about it based on the plot synopsis they released for the first 3 parts, which is going to be this, this Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Or is it Sunday, Monday, or Sunday, Tuesday, Wednesday? It's next week. I know for certain it's next week. I know it's, it's definitely Batwoman, Supergirl, Flash is next week for the 3 episodes. I don't remember, but that's not the point. And I know that Black Lightning is going to have a Crisis-focused episode on its own, kind of like a tie-in. Like when Crisis first ran back in the 80s. Was it the 80s? I think it was the 80s. Back when Crisis first ran, regardless of when it ran, there's always tie-in comics for maxi events, and the event for that had it was like the skies were red, and it's like, oh wow, that's weird. So it looks like they're going to be going on with that, where it's like the skies are red, Crisis is coming, the antimatter wave is on its way, and there's nothing they can do to stop it. But the multiverse is kind of crashing into itself on there, so now there's like 3 Jennifers and things like that. Things are getting weird. I'm not caught up on Black Lightning. I'm gonna be completely honest. I started watching season 2, and then I was like, wow, I did not finish season 1 because I have no idea what's going on. So I'm gonna have to start that from the beginning again. But he will be in the crossover, and we saw him in the trailer. So what we know from what the trades have told us and what all these other things have told us is that he is. It's weird because I think it was never confirmed who Kevin Conroy was playing, like which Batman Kevin Conroy was playing. I don't think that was ever confirmed. I think that we know now that he's playing the Earth 1 Batman. And not the same Batman as Crisis on what's it called? Not the same Batman as Kingdom Come Superman, which we also know is the same Superman as what's it called? The Christopher Reeve. It's a continuation of Christopher Reeve Superman. Now that's one thing we know for certain. We know that now from this trailer because he looks at Kate and he's like, "Oh, Kate," so they recognize each other. Now, the other issue that kind of exists is we don't know. We also know that Tom Welling and the Kingdom Come Batman, or the Earth 1 Batman at this point, is on, is only in, which one was it? Night 2, which was Batwoman, I believe. I think it's Supergirl, Batwoman, Flash. Whichever one Night 2 is, no, that's Supergirl. Whichever one Night 2 is, that's the one that, the Kingdom Come Batman is in. Or we now know Earth 1 Batman. That's going to be there. So we know that this trailer isn't just for Night 1, this trailer is for Night 2 as well. And what this tells me, and we also know Night 3 is definitely The Flash, so we get a lot of episodes with The Flash. We get Black Lightning, he appears in the Flash episode, not just in the first episode. So we know that that's to take place after, the Black Lightning episode that airs on Monday night. Now, why is this important? What does this matter to? And the answer to that is, it tells us that this trailer is going, I think that my theory with this whole thing is going to be that it's going to culminate, this part 1 is going to culminate with the destruction of Earth 38. Because that's what it seems like part 1 of this entire story arc is going to be. Is it all the heroes go to Earth 38 to hold off the crisis. They're unsuccessful, and then Earth 38 gets destroyed. And that's going to be that's where they go into the multi-week break before parts 4 and 5, which is Arrow and Legends. So that's the important thing that, we have coming from this. Another thing I want to talk about is from the mid-season finale of The Flash, which airs tonight. Last week was part 1, and I said it on Twitter, but I want to say it again. One of the best episodes of The Flash, and I think that any episode of the best episode of The Flash are the ones where Barry's forced to go on a personal journey. And the rest of the cast and the guest cast that comes back are all designed to be there to kind of put Barry through an emotional ringer of sorts. So I think that's why this episode works so well. Is the Last Temptation of Barry Allen, part 1, is so good because the cast is there. It's him confronted with this choice. He can either let himself, make the heroic sacrifice in Crisis and die. He doesn't want to do that because obviously who wants to go in and die? And I think the episode does kind of beat over the head the Jesus metaphor a little bit, which, we get it. And ultimately, I think that when he doesn't die in Crisis, which we know is going to happen, it's a foregone conclusion that he's not going to die in Crisis. When that doesn't happen, it's going to cheapen the effect a little bit, and it's going to feel like a cop-out. Unless in the next part they do something where it's like, and you've come to terms with the fact that you don't have to die because the Earth 90 Flash is going to take your place. Which, again, just a foregone conclusion that he's going to take the place. It's like, Barry Allen, they always use very lofty language about it. The Flash needs to die. It's never, it's always Oliver needs to die. Like, they're very specific about Oliver. It's got to be Oliver Queen from Earth 1, you, who just had a daughter, you need to die. he's coddling Oliver the Monitor a little bit. He's like, as a reward, I'm going to let you spend time with your daughter and son, all grown up. So he sends them to the past so he can spend time with them because he's not going to have that chance in the future. He in the last episode in Reset, which is the Groundhog Day episode, in that episode he lets him say goodbye to what's it called to Quentin. And he lets him to the fact that you can't dodge this. And I think that if he's going through these lengths with Oliver, I think that considering where Barry is at this point, if Barry needed to die, he'd be doing the same thing to Barry. So his lofty language that the Flash needs to die means that a Flash needs to die. John Wesley Shipp's going to be the Flash that dies, but which one's it going to be? It's going to be Jerry's going to be Earth 90, and I feel like it's going to be Earth 90. I feel like Earth 90 Flash is going to be the one who does take who falls on his sword for everything. But it does cheapen the entire first half of season 6. Now, it's like he's preparing for his own death, a death he freely accepts, and then nothing happens. He doesn't die. It kind of, it's gonna put a weird perspective on things. Where was I going with that? I need a person to control my tangents a little bit. But I think that the whole thing's kind of, I don't remember what I was going to say. Oh, right, that's where I was. The strong acting performance out of Grant that came this week was entirely because, they gave him an opportunity to run with it, and because he's playing with the rest of the cast. Like, the episodes where he's interacting with the Speed Force in previous seasons, the episodes where he's, any episode where he's got to confront his inner demons, like the Runaway Dinosaur was a very strong one. The one, I forgot the name of the season finale was for season 1, but that one is another example where he's got to deal with his internal struggles, and he puts himself, through that. Then, what else was there? Enter Flash Times, another one where he's got to come up with a solution. He's kind of just he's got to buckle down and do it without the team behind him. He's on his own. These are the strongest episodes that we get with with Barry, and that's why this episode works so well. The other thing about the episode that really struck me was, I think they're going to go with the what happened in Crisis in the comics, which was the reveal that when he goes into the Speed Force and disintegrates, fighting the Monitor, he ends up becoming the lightning bolt that gives himself his powers, because there's a small reference to that in this episode where he's when he's arguing with the Speed Force right when Ramsey's about to get complete control, and he goes and he's talking to Speed Force, and Speed Force is like, well, when you got these powers, this is the decision you made. And he yells back at the Speed Force and as his mother, and goes, I didn't make this choice, I was struck by lightning. And I think that the Speed Force exists through all time and knows everything, and the Speed Force knows that the decision was made by him to give himself the powers, because he knew what he had to do in the coming crisis. I don't think that's outlandish. Just like I remember seeing earlier in the season when I thought there was a possibility they could do Iris from the 30th century. I don't think that's likely anymore. But with the new trailer, I think that could come back as a possibility, especially considering it looks like them merging Earth 38 into Earth 1, considering that the trailer ends with the destruction of Earth 38. And I think this trailer gave away a little bit too much. I think the trailer gave away too much about what is, we didn't need to see Earth 38's destruction. Because I think that the way it is, like I've always said that when they do trailers, I always like when they do the three-pronged attack, the tease, the synopsis, and then the spectacle, where the tease is going to be, here's a look and here's something cool you're going to see. So like, let's take Batman v Superman is the one I like to use, because this one is kind of a masterclass at marketing the movie, even if the movie didn't turn out as great as it could have been. Where it's like the first trailer kind of shows off, here's Batman and Superman fighting. And that's what the movie's title does. It's the tease. It kind of like, here's a little bit of them fighting. Here's a shot of Wonder Woman looking cool. Here's a bunch of other cool things. Then the second trailer comes, and the second trailer tells you the synopsis of the movie, what the movie's about. And it's like, this fight happens because of Batman's fear of Superman, because he's an alien who's got these powers and he's unchecked and all of that. And then we see more of the fight, and then it goes on and we see that Lex Luthor's the one orchestrating the whole thing, which when they announced Lex Luthor was in the movie, I think everyone kind of assumed, knowing who Lex is and how Lex operates, and you get kind of a synopsis. Now that trailer goes a step too far and shows us shows us Doomsday as the thing that's going to unite and become Justice League, and the foundation of all the Jesus imagery we get in the movie. And then the third one, the spectacle, is the one where we get the Batman fight in the warehouse. We get there's a bunch of hostiles on the floor, on this floor, and he's like, okay, drop me down below. And he jumps up through the ceiling, and we see the first time we get to see the Ben Affleck Batman fight. Now, this trailer has a similar problem, the trailer 2 of Batman v Superman, where it tells us too much. We didn't need to know that Earth-38 was going to be destroyed. A lot of us assumed that Earth-38 was going to be destroyed because it kind of made sense to an extent that Earth-38 would be destroyed. And I've been saying since, season 2 of The Flash ended, and Supergirl picked up by the CW, Supergirl being on its own Earth was more of a convenience thing, than a real storytelling decision, I feel. Because at the time when Supergirl started, it was on CBS, and it was filmed in Los Angeles, I believe. Then when it got dropped by CBS and the CW picked it up, they relocated shooting to Vancouver. And when they shoot in Vancouver, now I saw someone compare it, but in License to Elongate, that place where Barry and the big palace thing that Barry and Ralph go to is the same one as the first episode of Supergirl for season 5, where she accepts her Pulitzer. Because they're all shooting in the same area, which is even more impressive when you consider the fact that every location feels like it has its own identity. And what was that? Where was I going with that? So he, when we see this happening with, where it's the reason why it was on alternate Earth is because then it's well, now we have a reason why Supergirl can't show up in every episode and just save everything, or why it happens. And, the rest of the Arrowverse is kind of good about that, where it's you never really questioned why Oliver didn't show up after season 1 of The Flash, and, unless it was something important, but they all kind of interchangeably helped each other, and it felt cohesive, and, all of that. And then I thought that when season 2 ended, where season 2 was the season where we got the, what's it called? We got World's Finest. It was season 1 of Supergirl, season 2 of The Flash, where Barry goes off to Earth-38 on accident and helps Supergirl fight Banshee and Banshee and Livewire. When that happens, that was when that made sense. It was on another network, so there were a lot more strings to pull. Now they're on the same network, they shoot in the same city, it's a lot easier to do. Not that it's incredibly easy, it's just easier. Um, so, so I thought that at the time, they were going to use Flashpoint to merge the Earths together, which is kind of what they did with Flashpoint, in the comics, especially more recently now that they have Doomsday Clock running, where it was bringing the Watchmen in. So it's interesting to see them. They're going to finally merge these Earths together. So I've been rambling for about 35 minutes now. We're going to wrap up there for today with the trailer talks. We are going to have a regularly scheduled Thursday episode. We're going to do Slacker. We're going to do Pokemon Sword. We're going to do Legion of Superheroes, issue 1. Tales from the Dark Multiverse numbers 3 and 4, which are Blackest Night and Final Crisis. And we're also going to have... there was an article about Superman that I wanted to discuss as well. Superman, is he unrelatable? Is there a way we can make Superman relatable in the current climate? And that was the issue that they're having over at Warner Brothers. And we'll discuss all of that next on Thursday. But I wanted to get this out of the way first, only because of how hot a topic it is today. So until next Thursday, have a great rest of your week.